Larysa, Zoltan, it's a great pleasure to have you here in Novi Sad with us. We had a fruitful 2 days of meeting and discussing in the Archives of Vojvodina. Zoltan, I really liked your thoughts about the European landscape of memory and the challenges and the future work we have ahead of us. Would you like to share it again, please?
Well, to summarize a little bit up, the challenges are many and the landscape is complicated, but we can classify it. And just as an illustration, we had an excellent exhibition earlier this year, which we called the Mosaic of Memories. And basically the idea was that people, ordinary people who remember Holocaust, who would like to commemorate Holocaust, send us indications what calls into their minds the Holocaust, what resembles them to the Holocaust. And it was a huge variety of objects, photos, built. And then you realize when you look at all these objects, which started from a T-shirt of a runner who ran from Budapest to Auschwitz, to family silver, which was used in the 1940s when a Jewish person from the forced labor unit came back home for a leave, and the grandmother took out the cherished silver to serve the dessert with it. You realize that there is a huge variety of things which can recall the memory of the Holocaust. But if we wish to synthesize it, then we see that there are iconic places of Holocaust, which we all know. And you spoke a little bit earlier about the danger of Auschwitzization of Holocaust, to reduce it into one place. Then there are all these camps which survived, unlike Treblinka and some others in the occupied Poland, which bring us this memory of the Holocaust. But then there are less tangible memories of Holocaust, which you cannot really touch, you cannot feel, you cannot see. For instance, like memoirs.
But precisely as you said, those well-known places that are certainly represent the history of the Holocaust, aren't we in a danger of oversimplifying the history if we focus only on those places? Because in my opinion, in order to have this, let's say, shared European narrative, the shared European memory, it has to be inclusive. It has to offer a possibility for people to recognize themselves in these memories. So those who did not ended up in those most iconic places can also feel that this is a memory about them, or this is a memory about their loved ones, or this is a memory about our communities as well.
It's a talent to pose one question, and there are at least 3 other questions pegged into this one question. But basically you are right, and if you take the numbers, and I really do not wish to enter into any guessing or saying the numbers, because all the numbers are unsure. But if we are talking about 6 million of European Jews killed in the Holocaust, and then we say that about 1 million was killed in Auschwitz, or 1 million, little bit more, then you realize that basically the majorities of those who were killed at some other places, and we must not pinpoint it into Auschwitz. But the other question, which was implicit in your question, was actually the very basic question: who is the victim of the Holocaust? Are the victims only those who were killed, these 6 million? Or perhaps who have survived but lost a loved one, a parent, a child, or something? Are they victims of the Holocaust? Or even when the whole family survived, but their home was looted, their possession was taken away, they were kicked out. Okay, they were better off than those ones who really lost their lives, but they were also to a certain degree victims of the Holocaust.
But the entire Europe changed forever. So all the communities, not only the Jewish community, of course, that were the main target of the destruction that Nazi planned, but the communities of the majority populations in other places that were now, after the Second World War, finding themselves without the Jewish communities, without the Jews that participated and were part of the societies. I mean, that is a change that is a result of this crime that changed the face of the Europe in our societies forever. When Larysa, you work in Poland, how do you engage young people? How do you find the ways to make them interested in a topic? This is always something we speak as a challenge, how to keep this history relevant, and why would we even care? How do you work with those questions?
Yeah, there are several ways actually, and what you mentioned also during our meeting, this local history, micro-histories are really important for the young people, and they would like to feel also important. They would like to feel that the place of their origin is important somehow in the history. They would like to discover the heroes and heroines. So for us in our work in Humanity in Action, it's really important to call them to action, not only give them some ready materials, but also encourage them to look for something, to look for the answers, and to do something for the local community. And as you said, after the war, so many people perished. And in Poland, we experienced also that sometimes majority of the city inhabitants disappeared after the war. So it really changed the local community, and it changed the narrative also about the history. And the history, the Jewish presence, it's still somehow in the family stories, in the local history. But I would like to come back also a bit to the first question, that there is also something what is missing, that absence is a part of our remembrance. And in many places in Poland you can find some traces of the Jewish life, but in some places you cannot find them. And this absence is also kind of trace. And we also call the attention on that the young people can discover what was in that place. They cannot see it today, but there was something before. So they can check in the archives, they can go to the library, they can Google it also, and ask their parents or grandparents or the teachers. And then they are discovering layer after layer the history of their hometown, of their families, what was for a very long time sometimes hidden. And especially in Poland, that we are, Poland suffered during the war and after the war, during the communism regime. Also, it wasn't so, let's say, popular to talk about the experiences after the war, especially from the Jewish perspective. The Holocaust, it wasn't a topic. And now the young people are finally ready to do that because they have tools, they have knowledge also, and there are some organizations and institutions who can help them to discover this hidden and forgotten history.
When you say hidden and forgotten history, how helpful are the local institutions such as archives and libraries? How well organized are and in a position to help the young people to seek and find those, what you said, hidden histories?
I have the feeling that the situation is changing, and for many years, I think from my own experience, that it was kind of closed space. Like young people were not so interested in the archives. For them, it was something really distant, and that was a long time ago history. But today, because of there are so many digitalized resources, you can find many things online, that it's a bit closer to the young people. There are many new programs, applications, like we are producing now this application to encourage young people and using the tool they know from their daily life. It's nothing new for them. So they can easily reach the history, they can easily check the facts, And this is something what is attractive for them. And these institutions also see that there is the way maybe to reach the young people, because we cannot just organize like exhibition because maybe a school group will come, but this is the end. We need to do something more to show them that there's interesting and that might be something interesting for them, because especially if we talk about the personal stories and the local stories, they can find the links between their life and the life of the neighbors who are living before and during the war.
Yeah, I really like this hands-on experience.
Definitely.
So they are seeking, they are researching, they are finding out. It must be exciting.
And this is also learning by doing.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
May I just chip in, because also this is a process of maturity in Holocaust research, because it's also a two-way process. It's not just that the young people are now more willing and able to do the research, and they are doing it, but also that their activity is more accepted from the scientific level. Because at the beginning, historians, scientists dealing with the history of Holocaust, they were dealing with the macro history of the Holocaust. And it took time. It took quite a long time to establish all the facts, who did what, why, when the decision was made, what were the major events. And slowly, and at that time, in this period, those people who were researching on local level, local historians, they were looked down a little bit. You know, some little teacher doing somewhere in a small town. I mean, okay.
This is not
okay.
this highest level.
You are clever. You are okay, kind of thing. So it's not nice, but this was the general attitude, and the profession is opening up and embracing these studies, because they realize that basically the whole story of the Holocaust can be told only if it's an inclusive story. If we are including the local stories, the family histories, and everything together gives this whole picture of the Holocaust.
Yeah, well, we all know beautiful words. This is not 6 million people murdered, but it's one murdered 6 million times. And in that sense, every story of every person that perished is absolutely equally important. That goes without saying. So for that reason, it is even more important to include all those different ways Holocaust was executed in various parts of Europe in order to understand the scope of this crime. But also what you said, the focus on micro-histories today is on another level, sort of. For instance, in the latest campaign of the Arlsen Archives, where they are looking for precisely micro-archives, micro-collections, private collections, because those corners that are still hidden in the dark, undiscovered, can tell us absolutely hundreds of thousands, I'm certain of it, hundreds of thousands of stories that we still don't know, and we know from our own experiences how we are learning and understanding aspects and dimensions of this history every time when we are discovering new angles to look at it, looking at it through gender perspectives, intersectionality, internationality, so not focusing on national history, but looking at it in a broader perspectives. So all these angles are helping us to hopefully better grasp the consequences and how this history impact the society we live in today. But back to the role of education and combination of primary sources and archives and archivists and education, particularly in times of falsification and distortion of the Holocaust. Larysa, for instance, your project, it must be one of the ways of addressing distortion.
Yeah, and this is a big topic, and we want to reach teachers and the students, because we think that we need to educate the younger generation, but we cannot reach everyone so easy. So we need to reach first the teachers also, who are responsible for the narrative the students will get. And we see also the problem about denying the Holocaust. We can see that the problem with not really understanding what happened, and lack of memory. And this is a big issue what we need to work on since the very beginning. And if the young people will get the proper message and they will have the resources, they can somehow absorb it and do something with this knowledge. Because this is the future generation who won't have a chance to meet the survivors also. So they will have just the message which comes from outside, totally outside. So this is the importance now to keep the stories, to avoid the misunderstandings, to avoid inappropriate narratives, and to build the understanding between the teachers or educators and the students, the receivers of the messages.
So we are in a time of a huge shift.
Yes.
The world without survivors is unfortunately just around the corner, but in the same time, the new digital landscape of cultural heritage and entire culture, basically, including the culture of memory, is rising in front of our eyes, and the accessibility of the documents, of the materials, of the artifacts is growing. It's basically now expected from the audiences that they are able to click and find things and investigate and think about them themselves. So in one hand we are losing one important source, but on the other, this new generation is expecting to have this helicopter view, of European shared or gathered culture and basically entire history looked at that way.
So yeah, that's why we decided to lead the project we are doing now, Break the Vicious Circle, Accept the Challenge, and to produce the digital mobile app, because this is something what is familiar for the young people, and we can provide the proper information, because as you said, this is the time when they can with one click discover everything, but there is also the danger because they can discover so many fake news. And this is a really big danger today, because not all the students and not all the teachers are prepared to work with that, because they cannot recognize sometimes the fake news. And it's really easy to read something and they even don't know what is the source of this information. So we collected proper knowledge, the documents, the archives, the photos, and we present it in the form which is acceptable and really interesting and attractive for the young people.
Yeah, I think that the matter of digital literacy or media literacy need to be included when we teach about, let's say, contemporary antisemitism or Holocaust in general, but also the other way around. I think that when teaching digital media and media literacy in general, because that's something, for instance, even here in Serbia, in schools now, this is included as an obligatory skill that students need to achieve during the schooling. But there we have to include understanding of antisemitism, of distortion of history, because that's the way how to start recognizing where the distortion online or anywhere else is laying. How do you deal with those things?
Well, one of the issues here is, and one of the aims of Holocaust education is to enhance critical thinking. And it is important. You might have technical skills, but if you don't have the skill in your brain, in your head, to distinguish what is likely, what is surely, what is relevant, what is less relevant, what is perhaps put there as a falsificate to mislead you, then we are in trouble. So therefore it's really important to give some firm frame of the story, which keeps the young mind within the the truth, let's say, let's use big words, and to enhance this capacity, enhance curiosity, and it's not a big deal if they are through this curiosity ask irrelevant or even might sound provocative questions. It's important that these questions are answered. And there is one more danger in this whole package. You know, one is the distortion kind of thing. The other danger, the other end of the story, is to claim that it is not relevant anymore. And this is also an issue that we are dealing with, and we are in our educational program in the Holocaust Memorial Center in Budapest emphasize why is the Holocaust story relevant today and most probably.
So what do you say? Why is it relevant?
Because I mean, there is a bottom line here, and we are repeating it as a mantra usually to never happen again, kind of thing. Because even today, even in our societies, we see the same roots of tendencies which were obvious in the 30s. You know, generating hate speech, generating victim groups, generating scapegoat groups in a society. First, perhaps just softly, you know, half jokingly, and then it starts becoming viral, and it's becoming really serious. And this is what we have to avoid.
So this is exactly the basis of our project and this 10 stages of genocide theory by Gregory Stanton. We added this one more step, and we would like to show the young people that it's still present in our society. And when they think about the Holocaust, I think that they have in mind something really distant and this big history, but they are not aware that today in our daily life we can see the same mechanisms still functioning. And as you said, we need to repeat something like mantra all the time, because this never forget, never again, all these big words are somewhere around us, but not everyone can understand it properly, actually.
Tell us about the extra step you added to the 10 steps.
So this is the 11th step added by Dr. Tomasz Cebulski, who is our advisor. He's a historian. And the last step is silence, because the silence is something what happened after the Holocaust and what is happening also today, actually. And we have this silence on different levels. On the state level, when it was forbidden officially, like there were no commemoration for a long time, for example. There is the silence in the local community, silence among the survivors also, who didn't want to talk. Silence in the families, silence between generations. So we have, for example, in Poland, this generation gap, that the second generation is not involved or is not that involved at the third generation, for example. And this is the silence in schools, in the school curriculum, because still the Holocaust is only mentioned. It's still not enough. And I'm really happy that we have so many teachers who in their free time decided to learn something more and decided to participate in many programs to stop this silence, because they feel the need that they would like to do something to commemorate and to present this history to their students and to the local communities. And this is the level where NGOs, institutions, teachers and schools are meeting. This is this meeting point. And I think we all have to cooperate to reach our goal, because I believe we have the same goal.
I think it sounds so horrifying, this word silence in this context. I think this is one of our main tasks, to break the silence and keep this history from oblivion, but also making an impact in social change, not only because it is a moral duty towards those that perished, but also to really make sure that it never happen again.
Yes, definitely. And the core of the social change is this change, is the action. So we should stop just talking and start really doing something, and to encourage students to do something. So giving just the knowledge to them is not enough, is the first step. And then they should take the responsibility and move forward.
Yes.
Just reflecting a little bit on your, you mentioned quite a lot of causes of this silence and the forms that this silence appears within the society, within small communities, within a family, within generational gaps and so on. But there is one more root for this silence, and that is that Holocaust was an unimaginable horror. And it is not easy to digest it. It is not easy to process it with a normal human mind. What happened in Treblinka, Sobibor, or Auschwitz, or many, or the unnamed fields in the east of.
Or simply on the street.
Or simply on the street. And here what we realize is basically what happens. You cannot imagine the death of 6 million people. But if you identify yourself and follow a story of one family or one individual, it brings it closer and it helps to process the whole issue, the whole history.
Yeah, I think that one of the main points of our project, the Holocaust, European Values and Local History, is precisely focus on small stories, the micro-histories, because I really believe that those destinies are equally important as any others, those who ended in those places of horror, or people who were killed at their homes and robbed of their property, are still the same victims of the same horrific crime that took place in various forms and formats through various times and periods. For instance, here in Vojvodina, as I said a couple of times, where 3 different areas were under 3 different occupying powers, where the Holocaust was executed through 3 different periods and so on. While even this is a quite small area, these memories are not contradictory towards each other, but not always in sync. You know, people think that what you said about like what is a picture, what do you imagine when you say Holocaust? Well, people are thinking about different things because their memories are, of course, different. And this is one of the tasks we are trying to solve. Thank you so much for this interesting talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.